But even before I graduated high school, I started dating my childhood best friend. We knew each other since we were 3 years old. And we started dating at 17. And I told her at the time I had a vision that I wanted to become a lawyer because I wanted to help people. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't know what kind of lawyer, but I wanted to be a lawyer. So then we announced at 17 that we were getting married. My mom and dad kicked me out of the house and said, you're never going to finish school and you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. So I got a job at General Motors on the assembly line building cars, 548 cars a day, while I studied and went to undergraduate and law school. And I got a business degree and a law degree while I was doing that. I've been married to my wife for 40 years last October. And she and I are a team, right? So we launched, when I graduated law school, General Motors happened to say, we're going to close this plant, sorry. And I'm like, okay. So I sent out 200 resumes to law firms and I got 0 response.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaiser, author of The River Only Runs One Way and The Far Unlit Unknown. 2 books available right now at your favorite online book retailer. Check them out and make them your companions on the next leg of your leadership journey. Also, really quick, my new book, It's Not You, It's the Algorithm, is coming soon. It's for anyone ready to stop letting tech run the show and start paying attention to what actually matters. Stay tuned. It's the kind of read that might just rewire your relationship with the scroll. All right, I am excited to introduce you to my guest today. His name is James Brown, and he is a business scaling expert and leadership coach who transformed his life from being told he wasn't good enough to becoming a successful entrepreneur. Starting out as a lawyer who built his practice from 0 to 8 million annually, James now helps business owners scale profitably through his Business Accelerator Institute. With a powerful personal story of overcoming limiting beliefs, James specializes in teaching entrepreneurs how to think differently, manage by data, and break through their own mental barriers. His approach focuses on understanding personal goals, reverse engineering business success, and creating systems that allow businesses to grow sustainably. James also has a badass tattoo on his arm that you will need to visit his website to see. I recommend doing it, not just for that, but to really get into James's world because he's got so much value to offer. You can find James on LinkedIn and his website. Links to connect with him, as usual, are in the show notes. When you connect, let him know you heard him here on the Play Your Position podcast. All right, team, are you ready for kickoff? I know I am. Let's go. James, it is so great to have you here today. I'm excited to hear your stories about what you're up to in the world, how you help business owners grow bigger, do things differently, all that good stuff. And right out of the gate, let's set the context for listeners and have you tell us your story about when you first got the call to leadership. How old were you? What was going on in your life at the time? And then connect the dots between then and where you're at today.
Yeah. So thank you very much again for having me today. And, I've been pondering that question, since yesterday when I was trying to prepare for this. But I think, I got the call for leadership when I was a freshman in high school. And actually, then it was junior high. So
right.
we were in junior high. But yeah. Throughout my childhood, I was always told that that I would not be good enough,
Ooh.
that I can't do things. I'm of German descent, so heavy weight goes in the family. So I was an overweight kid. And my brother was my idol, right? He played baseball. And I said, Mom and Dad, I want to play baseball. Nope, you can't do that. You're too big.
Hmm.
He played basketball. I wanted to play basketball. Nope, you can't do that. You're too big.
Hmm.
I said, how about Little League football? And they're like, okay, let's try that. And I never made it on the field, right? I was a follower at that time. And afterwards they said, see, we told you
Hmm.
you can't do anything. So then I'm a freshman in high school and I'm like, I want to try out for the football team. And they said, why? You didn't make it before. And I said, well, I'm going to make it. I don't care what anybody says. That's the internal conversation I remember having. And so I tried out and I made varsity as a freshman. And then I was captain of varsity. So when I was in ninth grade is when I really got the calling through football
Yeah.
that I was a leader on the field and I started to become a leader off the field.
Yeah. And just for listeners to know, freshman year in high school here in the States, for you international listeners, is 14 years
14.
old. Yeah.
Yes. So that progressed and I stayed on varsity and was the captain for the next 4 years, played college football. But even before I graduated high school, I started dating my childhood best friend. We knew each other since we were 3 years old. And we
Wow.
started dating at 17. And I told her at the time I had a vision that I wanted to become a lawyer because I wanted to help people. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't know what kind of lawyer, but I wanted to be a lawyer. So then we announced at 17 that we were getting married. My mom and dad kicked me out of the house
Oh my God.
and said, you're never going to finish school and you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. So I got a job at General Motors on the assembly line building cars, 548 cars a day, while I studied and went to undergraduate and law school. And I got a business degree and a law degree while I was doing that. I've been married to my wife for 40 years last October.
Congratulations.
And, she and I are a team, right? So we launched when I graduated law school. General Motors happened to say, we're going to close this plant. Sorry. And I'm like, okay. So I sent out 200 resumes to law firms and I got zero response. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'll open my own. And so I opened my own, and I knew at that point, because of my leadership with football and everything, that I could take that mentality and that don't settle for anything, that you can do anything. And I took that into starting a law firm. And I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. And so roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, the first 6 to 8 months, I was getting maybe a client or two a week. And I did bankruptcy work. And the reason I chose that was because I can help people. I can help them save their homes and cars and all that. And I saw a lot of bad things happen to good people at General Motors at the car plant when they got laid off. So I went into bankruptcy. I started studying the human buying process and what makes people take action. And I changed my marketing message about 6 months in. And the first week that we ran that ads, I signed 68 clients that week.
Okay, what did it say?
It said, instead of saying, hi, my name's James, call me if you need help getting out of debt. That's what everybody else was saying, right? I said, are you about to lose your home and can't tell your family you're going to live on the street, right?
Wow.
Are you worried you'll have to pull your kids out of school and leave their friends? What will your neighbors think? You probably feel alone, like you don't have any options, but you have options. Call me today. Right. And that's the ad. That was it.
Incredible.
And 68 clients the first week, 72 the second week. And all of a sudden it's just me and my wife. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
You
now,
probably said something else besides
yeah.
uh-oh.
And so now all of a sudden our factory starts to implode. How are we going to produce the work we promised?
Right.
Right. And that got me thinking about the different parts of a business. Right. You got and every business. What I had this epiphany And I remember back in my business degree days, one of my professors said, every business is the same. Really, the only thing that changes is what you sell.
Yeah.
But every business has the same 7 parts: marketing, sales, your factory to deliver what you promised, your people to run the factory, your money and metrics, or your physical plant, whether you're virtual or brick and mortar, your money and metrics so you can control your data. And then the last part of the business is you, the business owner.
Right.
And so the only thing that's different is what we sell. And so I sold legal services, right? I have a client right now that sells hard cider, the alcohol kind of drink.
Sure.
Right. And all the other parts are the same. So as I started to see, okay, my marketing took off. Now my sales, all of a sudden, my factories, the work's not getting done. So now it's building systems and procedures, right? And then plugging the people into the systems. Now I've got the people section. And once I understood that all of those 7 parts work together, the concept of running a successful business was really easy. Now,
but what about the execution?
Correct.
Yeah.
I will never, ever, ever tell anybody that running a business is easy.
It's
You're
not.
always going to run into challenges. And they're like, well, when I get to $2 million, I'm not going to have these challenges. No, you're going to have new challenges, right? New level, new devil.
Correct.
And so, there is and where I see a lot of people getting in trouble is when they're making emotional decisions in their business. And like, for example, they'll run a marketing campaign. This is a true story. I had a lady who ran a pay-per-click campaign, and I got on a call with her, and she said, I'm canceling pay-per-click. I said, why? She said, because I got $0 in revenue from it last month. And I'm like, okay. I knew she was emotional because she was hot right out of the gate.
Sure.
And I said, let's talk about the data. And she told me her click-through rate. And I'm like, yep, that's double the average. She told me her landing page was converting at 25%. I'm like, okay, that's more than
That's
the 10%
pretty good.
average, right?
Yeah.
And she got 116 calls, and she set 4 appointments, and 2 of them didn't show up and the other 2 didn't sign. So she's canceling pay-per-click. I go,
interesting.
Your intake is broken. It's not pay-per-click, right? Marketing's job is to deliver the right person in the right frame of mind with the right problem to your doorstep, and that's it. And marketing did that. Your intake person dropped the ball, but she was making an emotional decision in her business because she didn't look at the data.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really where the money and metrics part of the business comes in. Right. So I get people to think differently about how they look at their business, and that's really, I think, my superpower in the leadership skills.
Okay.
Is getting people to look at that and then build a team around them that can have the same vision and go out and accomplish that, and therefore buying back the time of the owner.
So for listeners right now who are hearing what you're saying, and maybe I know many of my listeners run their own business or are serving as an independent, like within a larger construct, say like a realtor, right?
Sure.
I also have people that work for organizations of all different sizes, but they're hearing you talk about the marketing, looking at the data, don't make decisions when you're hot, take a step back. You're not practicing law now, or are you? No, you've been coaching and working with business owners for quite some time.
Correct. So go ahead.
Right now, 2025, when we're recording this, we've been through a lot. The internet is here, digitization is here, pay-per-click and all these things are here. As we continue to move deeper into this century of massive transformation from a technological standpoint, also at a human level, because things are happening to people every day. Where does somebody start with all of this, James? Like, what you're sitting down with somebody who's seen that ad and said, I don't want to lose my house, right?
Yeah.
Metaphorically speaking.
Sure.
What do you do with someone like that?
So, and I'm glad you brought it up this way, because I left out part of the story of where I got to where I am. And one of the things I realized was I enjoy building businesses. And I built my law firm to about $8 million a year. And I decided that I didn't want to practice law past the age of 50. That was just, practicing law was just a vehicle to get me there. So I sold it at the age of 49. And that's when and that was in 2014. So then I've been in consulting since then. I've worked with over 450 businesses. So I would say with the business owner that comes to me and they don't know where to begin, the very first thing I ask them is, what do you want?
Great question.
Personally, professionally, and financially. What do you want to live the life you've always wanted to live?
Mm-hmm.
We have to start with that.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I have somebody that says, well, I only need this much. I didn't ask you what you only need. I asked you what you want to live the life you truly want. And that's a different answer for everybody. Right. I've got some people that, man, I want this $1 million house and I want another $2 million beach house and I want to travel 26 weeks a year. And then I've got some people that are like, no, I just want this. And that's okay. Everybody's goals are different, but we have to start with that because once they tell me what their life is that they want it to look like, I tell them to cost it out. Tell me how much it's going to cost you a year to live that life. So then let's say they tell me, oh, well, if I get all these things and here's what my payments are going to be and here's everything I need to travel, I need to make $500,000 a year personally next year. I'll say, okay, now let's figure out how much your business needs to generate gross to give you $500,000. So what was your net margin in your business? And then we reverse engineer everything. Let's say that it's 30%. Okay, well, your business needs to gross 1.5 million for you to take home 500,000. Now, what's your average sale value? Okay, it's $5,000. Great, you need 300 sales. Now I just told my sales team what they need to do. What's your conversion rates? Now I can back into exactly how many leads I need to get 300 sales to produce 1.5 million in revenue to give me 500,000 in total owner's benefits, right? So it's reverse engineering, but they have to start with what is it that they want.
And what's that triangle? There's 3 parts to that. Can you repeat that for listeners? It's like, what do you want financially?
Yeah, professionally and personally.
Okay.
Right. And I will say this, Mary Lou, that business owners, they have to progress personally and professionally before they'll ever progress financially. And the reason I say that is most of the roadblocks people have are mindset related. The story I just gave you was mine. It's the reason perseverance is on this arm, because I was always told I won't accomplish anything.
Right.
And I had to break through that limiting belief that I'm not good enough. And I'm 59 years old right now, and I still have that belief.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you have to, if they just tell me they want to make $1 million, I'm going to say, why?
Yeah.
Why? Because if you can't anchor to a why, then it's not going to be important to you. So where do you want to be personally, professionally, and financially is the first step. And what's it going to cost you to live that life?
Mm-hmm.
So in 2026, what's it going to cost you to live that life? Okay, great. Now we know what your number is. So now let's reverse engineer how much the business has to create in order for you to have that. And we start with the net margin on their P&L. Let's say their P&L is negative. Okay, great. Then we got to get it to, I want you to get it to like a 35% net margin. So then we can determine how much gross revenue then the business has to produce. And once we know that, now we're starting to put together our business plan. I got to produce $1.5 million a year if I want to make 500,000. So what is my average sale value? If it's $5,000, then I need 300 sales.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just told my sales team what I need to do. Well, okay, how are we going to produce the 300 sales? Well, how many people do we need to talk to get 300 clients? I know that in my business, we converted 73% of the people we talked to. So in order to get 300 clients, we'd have to talk to 400 people. And then I back into how many leads. Now I've told my marketing team what they have to produce, right? And then if we are successful doing that, what changes in my systems and procedures do I need to make so that my factory doesn't implode while I'm trying to produce 300 sales? And what people then do I need to hire and when to plug into the systems, right? So it's all kind of interconnected. But that's where you start. That triangle is how much is it going to cost me to live the life I want to live, and how much gross revenue is required from the business to do that, and then you back into how many sales you need because of the average sale value.
So somebody shows up on your doorstep, James. How prepared are they to talk about these things? Or do you get a lot of deer in the headlights looks?
Deer in the headlights, for sure.
Yeah, that's what
Right?
I thought. Because I'm listening to this and I'm thinking of people that I know and I love dearly who are business owners. And I guarantee you they don't know the answers to these things because, one, we're not taught ever to articulate what is it that you really want. That's a question that's been running my life for the last 2 or 3 years. But it wasn't until someone put that in front of me over and over and over again that I finally said, Mary Lou, what is it that you really want? And then you got to get into the weeds of what you've been doing. And I'm wondering, so, okay, you get the deer in the headlights response. People start to backpedal a little, probably get uncomfortable, like, oh, I don't even, or no, or there's probably some shame going on because their numbers
100%
aren't where they think they need to be, or they've been running around acting like they're something what they're not. I mean,
yes.
So what, from a coaching standpoint, what are some things that some questions some listeners could ask themselves related to getting into the mindset that will prepare them to do some of this reverse engineering you're talking about?
Yeah. So I'd say the first thing I tell people is we don't know what we don't know. Okay. The second thing I tell them, and I got this from the first bankruptcy judge I ever went in front of. It was their federal judges, and I went into his office, and above his desk there was a picture framed, and it said, "We take debtors as we find them." Right, and that taught me that it doesn't matter how they got into debt or why. I'm taking you as I find you, and I'm going to help you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right, that's the approach I take with business owners. I don't care what's happened up to this point. Anything that's happened up to this point, you don't know what you don't know. So there's no shame in that. So you can be an open book with me. And here's the thing I also tell them is I've made more mistakes than you've even thought of. And so as we talk through these things, I can help you with better ways to think about it and to do it. So that's number one, is I have to set the tone with them that this is a no judgment zone. We take business owners as we find them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Deer in the headlights. I had a brand new call with a guy yesterday, and I said, okay, where did you end up in 2023 revenue wise? 2024, I mean. He said, I don't know. I go, what do you mean you don't know? He said, I don't have my financials yet. And I'm like, okay, it's March. He goes, well, I don't normally get them. I'm like, okay, that's something we can change, right? No worries. Off the top of your head, what do you think you made? Right. And so he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And in that moment, you can sense that he had a little bit of shame about not knowing his numbers, but that's common. Now, I'm going to say this not in a derogatory way, but a lot of business owners are immature. Immature, not in their personal sense, but in the sense of running a business. They just don't know.
Yeah.
So that's my starting point always. And then to take them one baby step at a time to start gaining confidence, and the more you can get them to start managing based on data and take emotion out of it, then they start to make really educated decisions in their business and not just knee-jerk reactions.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
It's amazing when you think about it, how many businesses continue to operate, given statistically, I mean, when you're seeing in the grand scheme of things, a very small percentage of business owners, and yet you're seeing these patterns again and again. The deer in the headlights. I don't know my numbers. That sense of that now they feel dumb, and that nobody likes to feel like that. And yet, I'm curious, what is your theory about why so many business owners have that immaturity around the business? Why is that?
I think in hindsight, and I'm going to look at my own, but then I see parallels with other professions, other businesses, is that nobody really teaches you how to run a business. Just like in the United States, they don't teach our kids like finances and stuff in high school, how to balance a checkbook, how, that kind of stuff, the dangers of credit cards and the interest rates and all of that. They don't teach it. Why not? Because we have a lot of young people that get in debt really, really fast because we have this I want it now mentality. And unfortunately, some of the things are marketed in such a way where, you can have it now for no money down and this low payment for the rest of your life. Right. And so why don't we teach finances in high school? I got a business degree and I got a law degree, and nobody in that 8 years of school taught me how to run a business. They taught me big, broad concepts.
Right.
But not how to run a business on a day to day. And it amazes me that it's like that. So that's why I think most of these people, they'll have their degree or whatever. Even if they don't have a degree, they're really great. Their gift is something, and they're doing it very well. And then they have, oh my God, why am I doing this for him? I can do it for me.
Yes.
And they jump in with this idea, and the idea is great. But then all of a sudden we get stuck in this working 70, 80 hours a week because we don't know how to run the business.
Right.
And that's where people then start getting burnt out and then go back to working for somebody else.
I've seen that cycle so many times.
Yes, absolutely.
In people, they reach that point where they just can't do it anymore. They tell themselves they can't. And it's going back to what you started with, is you don't know what you don't know. So ignorance is our biggest problem. Always. Okay, so one of the things that you're good at too, James, is you help businesses scale. So say the business owners got all these things in place and they're saying, James, I'm ready to take it to the next level. Talk to us about, what does it mean to scale a business? Because that's a term that gets thrown around a lot. And I don't think a lot of people really do understand it as it really is.
Yes. So again, scaling is going to be different for everybody. And if there are quite a few people that don't necessarily want to scale past a certain point. So when I'm talking about scaling, I'm talking about revenue, but they're scaling the right way and they're scaling the wrong way. I can tell you right now, like I started a separate coaching business in 2024, and we ended up the year about 850,000. This year, my goal is 3 million. So I'm scaling up to 3 million. That's what Business Accelerator Institute is going to help me to do. Next year, I already know that my goal is 15 million. All right. So I'm scaling pretty aggressively. That's actually not the hard part. The hard part is making sure that you scale while remaining profitable. I've had multiple business owners come to me and say, I doubled my revenue from 2 years ago to last year, but I personally didn't make any more money. So what's the point? And I'm right.
Yeah. What was missing? What was missing there?
Yeah. So here's where most of them get in trouble is when you look at your financials, and this goes to managing based on data, their ratios start to get out of whack. Like all of a sudden their marketing takes off and the sales take off and they make an emotional decision and they hire a bunch of people. And
Okay.
now their payroll ratio is way up here. So that guy who said that he wasn't making any more money, I said, let me look at your P&L for the last 2 years. And when I looked at it, his payroll cost was 79% of his revenue. And because he was hearing that we're overwhelmed, we're overworked, we're over this, so he just kept throwing money at it and hiring people. And so that ate up, right? If you think about the rule of thirds, every dollar that comes into the business, no more than a third should go to payroll costs.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
he was at 79%.
Yikes.
Right? His other overhead was at 38%. So if you add the two together, that's 116% or 117%.
There's
So
nothing left.
Yeah, there's no profit left. That's why he wasn't making a profit. So if you manage your ratios as you scale your business, then your profit level should remain pretty constant. And how do you do that? Well, your biggest expense is going to be payroll, followed by marketing, right? So if you know exactly what the capacity of your team is, how long it takes them to do things, and how many of X can they do, then that should tell you how many sales before we have to hire the next person, right? And so I knew that for every Chapter 7 bankruptcy case client that we brought on, my legal assistant had about 14 hours in that case over 3 months. So I knew exactly how many cases she could handle before I needed to add a second legal assistant. So when you do it that way, you can manage your payroll ratios and as you scale. The other place they get out of whack is marketing. And there's so many things that could go into that, but most of the time, business owners just throw money at marketing and hoping it sticks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And to me, you might as well go to the casino.
So what's your approach to good marketing?
Yeah. So I look at it this way. First of all, who are you marketing to?
Right.
Right. You can't market to everybody. So who is that avatar? And more importantly, what's keeping them up at night? Truly keeping them up at night? And where do they get their information from? I learned that lesson. I was in a mastermind group and they were all sitting around talking about how they were using radio and it was killing it for them. And I'm over there just taking notes, Okay. What stations did you? Well, it was news talk and sports talk. Okay, great. And I went back home and I threw $10,000 at news talk and sports talk and I got 0.
Wow.
And I'm like, why? It's working for them.
Yeah.
But I went and threw my money at it and it didn't stick, right? So I started asking my clients, do you listen to the radio? Yeah. What stations do you listen to? And it came back as jazz and urban contemporary, jazz, urban contemporary. So I took the same $10,000 and put it on those two formats and the phone rang off the hook.
Interesting.
Right?
Now,
So
how did you know?
Yeah, so that taught me that I need to know where they get their information from before I choose a marketing channel.
Yes. But, well, you asked your clients. Now, not everybody has that ability. What if you're just getting started or, you're a pretty young business and you don't really have a lot of data?
Mm-hmm.
How does somebody just getting started come up with a marketing campaign? I mean, you use that awesome example at the beginning of our conversation today about what all the other bankruptcy lawyers were doing with their ads, their billboards and their ads. And then you went the other way. So what words of wisdom do you have for people listening who may be like you were and it's like, man, I've been throwing money at, channel X and Y and nothing is happening?
Yeah. So usually when business owners start out, they're in what I call hustle, market, sell mode, right?
Yeah.
And when you first start a business, a lot of your people that you're getting are through referrals and people that you know.
True.
They know you, like you, and trust you already. Okay, so there's not a lot of marketing dollars going out, but you can ask those people if they're the kind of clients you want. Ask them, do they listen to the radio? Are they on social media? Okay, what social media? Like I'm on Facebook a lot more. I've hardly ever been on Instagram. So somebody in my demographic, I don't think is going to get my information from Instagram. Right. So you can ask the people that are closest to you to get started. It's good to build your business on that know you, like you, and trust you segment, but that's only going to get you so far.
Yep.
Right.
You're going to
Depending on how
plateau.
big your network is. Right. But then you got to start advertising to the general public. And those are people that don't know you, like you, and trust you.
Yep.
So before you just throw money at a marketing channel, ask all these people that you do know, where do they get information? It at least gives you a head start. The reason that having a different marketing message works is because from a human buying perspective, when we have a problem, our brain is constantly thinking about it 24/7. Our brain is designed to keep our body safe, right? And so we're looking for a solution. We all see hundreds of thousands of marketing messages every day, and most of them are noise because we don't have that problem. So we're not thinking about it. But when we have the problem and we're thinking about it, all of a sudden the marketing messages start popping up, right? And if they all look the same, the brain gets confused, doesn't know what to do. So the default is, and a lot of people don't know this, the default is lowest price. I was searching for an outdoor TV not that long ago because I built a gazebo out back, and there was literally thousands of options, and they all looked the same if you would have crossed out the manufacturer. So I went with lowest price. So most business owners, we don't want to compete on price. It's a race to the bottom of the barrel.
Yep.
So when you have a marketing message that stands out over everybody else, all of a sudden you brought value to that person and they're like, I want to do business with you. Price starts to become irrelevant.
Yes.
And so that's one of the reasons why we want to have, if you know where they get their information from and you give a marketing message that's different than every other option out there, you will dominate your market. I haven't had one yet. I started my office in St. Louis, Missouri, and then 2 years later, we opened in Detroit, and I took the same approach, same result. Then we opened in Kansas City 2 years later, same result. Then we opened in Miami 3 years later, same result. And that taught me that people are people are people.
Yeah.
And they will go through the same process. I always tell people, don't just throw money at things, tilt the odds in your favor, and then test small, and then get your numbers dialed in, and then increase your budget. See, with that radio example I gave you, I didn't do that. I just threw $10,000 at it.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't tell anybody to do that today.
No.
But that was one of the mistakes I made.
And in all fairness, that's how we learn best, is through our mistakes. So I'm a big advocate of, working with the right people and finding the right answers. And oftentimes that happens only after we've fumbled around and made some errors in judgment, or just, again, didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
There is no perfect there is no person on this planet who's just sailed through everything, and did everything right. It's just, which is why there's people like you doing what you do, James, because to your point earlier, it is absolutely criminal to me that our school system from the beginning through the upper levels doesn't address the basics of how to function in a society that requires you to use money every single day for everything. Yeah. But there's no financial literacy. It's just, I agree. Here you go, figure it out. And that's when people get into trouble, like you said. I see it all the time.
One of the things I did with my kids when they were still like under 10 was I gave them an old-fashioned checkbook.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave them each a different piece of paper, and it showed how much a week they made, how much had to go to taxes, how much their rent was, and all this other stuff. And they had to balance their checkbook and pay their bills. And then if they had money left at the end of the month, that was their allowance. And then they could go to the movies or whatever.
Gift you gave your children.
And now they understand finances much better. And like, why can't we do that with our kids in school?
Oh, I have my theories, but we won't go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I would like you to talk about, you said you've been in a mastermind. So what keeps your brain sharp? How do you fill your, find your inspiration, keep your, as Stephen Covey liked to say, your blade sharp, James?
Yeah. I think, I think I've been put on this earth to help other people. And I'm going to always look to ways to expand that, how I can help other people, which is what the businesses that I have right now are for. And so, how do I stay sharp is I constantly try to surround myself with people that are smarter than me.
And you do that how?
Through mastermind groups, through coaching, through all of that. I invest a lot of money back into my own personal development, even though I've been doing this for 40 years now.
Yeah.
I still learn things every day. We just got back Sunday night from a mastermind meeting in Sedona. And it was a room of 12 like-minded, very forward-thinking entrepreneurs. And, the ideas that come out of a group like that were amazing. I always look at other industries because if somebody's doing something that's innovative, I always look at it and go, how can I use that in my business, and make it work? And so the more, if I'm ever the smartest person in the room, it's time for me to leave the room.
Yeah, yes.
And so that's how I stay sharp, and really looking at the cutting edge businesses, even if it's outside the industry, and what they're doing and figuring out how I can make it work in my business.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Those are some fantastic tips. Listen, team, I hope you're hearing this because one, you do have to invest in yourself. It's an ongoing process. You are in a mastermind that I belong to. Our very first principle of the group is you are your number one asset because you cannot outperform how you feel. If you are exhausted, if you are stressed out, if you are anxious, if you are worried all the time, you're not going to function properly and it's going to become this spiral.
Yes.
And, James, you see people like this every single day who have been on the hamster wheel, who have been perhaps misled, not because they're dumb, but because there's just so much out there coming at us constantly. And one of the most important skills you were getting at earlier is you've got to take care of that 6 inches between your ears. That mindset is everything. And
yes,
you have to put yourself in the right rooms. That's one of my mantras is I ask people all the time, are you putting yourself in the right rooms? If you're not in the right rooms, what are you doing there? Get out. And when you've outgrown a room, which can happen, I've been in mastermind groups where I just outgrew it. It had served me. I had contributed. I had been, fed, and it just became a time. It's kind of like graduation. Like you can't do 12th grade or you can't do your master's program year after year after year, right?
Right.
So maybe you could give us a couple of insights about where does somebody begin looking for a group of like-minded people that they can, then get in the right room.
Yeah, I think, a lot of low cost, no cost ways would be look for Facebook groups, look for individual groups like that and join them, test them out, see how they are, and you can tell pretty easily whether you're the smartest person in the room or not. But learn from them. A lot of times I'm in all these groups and I just monitor the conversations and then I go in and I'll give feedback. But that's one way to do it where it's pretty low cost, no cost. Another way is to get involved with a mastermind group. Depending on what level you're at, you may not be ready for that. Just getting into a mindset group call. I do a mindset group call every month. And one of the things that I know is that human beings, like our subconscious mind is developed before we're 7 years old. And so the story I was telling you at the beginning where I'm not good enough comes from that. And I'm 59 years old and I still have that limiting belief, right? Limiting beliefs can keep us from moving forward. And that's where we have the anxiety and the fear and we don't do anything. So I literally have to force myself to step back and say, is this a fact or is it an illusion? And when I see no data that backs up that this is a fact, I'm like, okay, push forward, let's break through it. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't in the groups that I was in.
Yeah.
I think there's lots of courses out there that you can take that are claimed to be mindset courses, but we just have to be careful with it. I would get into for the startup businesses, find the low cost, no cost options. Get involved in group settings. It's one of the reasons I launched Business Accelerator Institute. Is not everybody can work with me individually.
Right.
And so I want to have this one to many and have group calls available. Every Wednesday morning, for example, I have open office hours. And I just open my Zoom room for 2 hours, and any business owner that wants to jump in there and ask questions can do so. We do mindset lessons in the afternoon on Wednesday, and then we have other group calls so that it's an affordable way to start getting the experience you need through other people.
I love that. So tell us, give us the 30,000-foot view of this amazing, I don't know, what do you call it? Is it a mastermind in a way?
It can be, but I don't think every business owner is ready for that at that point, right? I'm never going to tell somebody they should do something they're not ready for.
Yeah.
So mastermind, I think if you come in and you get the basics, so Business Accelerator Institute, we're giving the basics, and I'm setting it up almost like a university. So there's
Okay.
level 100 courses, 200 courses,
Yes.
300 courses. You come in and you'll take a 4-week module on, marketing 101, sales 101, hiring 101. And then you graduate to level 2 and 3. And as you're scaling your business, and during that whole process, you have access to these group calls that are live and you can get your questions answered. Certain people in that group would like more. They want more. That's where they can sign up potentially to work with me or join a mastermind group.
Right.
So
Nice.
depends on what level they're at, and it's got to be right for them. And I tell every client that comes aboard, you will outgrow me too. And I want that to happen.
Yes. Good. Yeah.
So that's kind of the vision I have for Business Accelerator Institute, and that's the way we're taking it. We want to make sure it's an affordable way for people to get to learn what they don't know,
Right.
without having to put out tens, 20s, $30,000 a year to have a private coach. There will be a day when you should have that, but it may not be immediately.
Right. And I love that you're offering that option for people as a way to get started, that it feels it's a less intimidating perhaps. And then definitely the affordability factor plays into it, but they can still get a lot of value from the experience. So for listeners who'd like to learn more about it, where do you hang out online, James?
Yeah, so we actually build out a welcome page for each of your listeners so they can go right to it for this podcast. It's businessaccelerator.institute/play.
Nice.
And there's a free download we're giving to your listeners. It's called The Top 10 Mistakes That'll Destroy Your Business.
That's subtle.
So they can go right there on that landing page and download it. They can also find out information about other things that Business Accelerator Institute has to offer. I do a free 30-minute discovery call with any business owners, and that's with me personally, to see if it's something that would be a good fit or not and how it could help. If not, I'm going to point you in the right direction of where to go.
Love that. So team, these links, this link to get the mistakes, which we all need, we always respond to the negative, right? Will be on James's show notes page at pyppodcast.com, along with other resources. As we bring this into a landing here, James, is there a book or two that you would highly recommend, a good starting point, or one that you just return to over and over again because every time you read it, you see it differently because you're different?
Yes, there is. I don't know whether I can say it on your podcast.
You can.
There is a book that I use right now to do my mindset lessons that is called Unfuck Yourself.
Oh, I know that book.
Yep. And there's 8
Is that
basic.
Simon?
Yeah, it's Gary Bishop.
Gary Bishop, yeah.
Yep. And there's 8 concepts in there. From lesson number 1 is you are not your thoughts, right? And it walks you through that. So that is a great book. Another one that I think is really great is by Bruce Schneider, and it's called Energy Leadership.
Haven't heard of that one.
And
Great.
it's where you can recognize different people. Everybody's in a different energy level. Like right now, I could tell you and I are on, there's 7 energy levels, 1 being the lowest, 7 being the highest. 7 is like God, right?
Yeah.
1 is victim mode, and everything's stacked against me and I can't do anything about it. Levels 3, 4, and 5 are creative, right? And I could tell, like, as soon as we got on this call, that we're in those levels.
Yeah.
Right. But there's calls when I get on with somebody, I'll say, hey, how's it going today? Oh, well, we got the new administration and things are changing and my business sucks and I can't do anything about it. And as long as they stay in that energy level, I can't get them to make progress.
No.
Right. Energy level 2 is anger.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. So I'll have people that'll say, well, I've got my staff won't do what I tell them to do and blah, blah, blah. And I recognize they're in energy level 1. And I'll say, pardon my French, what the fuck is wrong with you? Yes. Why are you tolerating this?
Yes.
Right. Yes. And then they'll go, you know what? You're right. I'm the owner of this business. Now they just moved from energy level 1 to 2. And then I'll say, what are we going to do about it? Yep. Let's brainstorm. Now I moved them into the energy level 3 and we start coming up with solutions. So Energy Leadership by Bruce Schneider is a great book.
Great. I will add that to your show notes page too, along with Gary Bishop's Unfuck Yourself, which I have on my shelf. I haven't pulled that out for a while. I think I will. It's a good one. So James, you get the last word. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you would like to end this amazing conversation with?
Yeah, I think for every business owner out there, have the mindset. Oh, here's another book of reference. It's called The Power of Broke by Damon John. He's the guy that's on Shark Tank. He started the FUBU clothing line. But that power of broke, right? Operate from the power of broke. Tell yourself there isn't anything you can't do. Right? There's terror barriers you're going to have, but you can push through them because most of the time it's just an illusion and it's anxiety because of the unknown. But push through it and you can accomplish anything. And I would say the one mistake that I see most people make is they think too small. Think bigger. Think bigger. There's nothing that can stop you except yourself.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number 1 in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com. More of the leader you are meant to be today.
This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.